So, welcome you all to another episode on Azure Honor. I have got a very special guest for the show today. Such an inspiring, energetic woman, Jonah Andersson, and who's got good amount of experience with Azure serverless technologies, especially with Azure Functions. Let us get to know more about Jonah and about the technology that she is working with.
Azure Functions is very useful, especially if you're working with event-driven, use case. Also, not just
Mhm.
Azure Functions, but there is also an extension of Azure Function called Durable Functions. So Durable
Mhm.
Functions have different types. Azure Functions, the Durable Functions in Azure, they support several languages that we love to code. Hi, Essie, and great to be here in your podcast episode today. And thank you to the audience that are listening and watching us right now. Thanks for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you on our show. So, first to get started with, I'm so excited to know from you about more about Jonah and about the technology that she's working with.
Yes, my name is Jonah Andersson. I am a software engineer that
Mm-hmm.
codes fullstack.net development, specifically C Sharp. I work
Mm-hmm.
as an IT consultant at Forefront Consulting Sweden, and I am also a Microsoft MVP for Azure as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. And on my free time, I volunteer a lot in public speaking, sharing knowledge about Azure, serverless, and also I do mentoring to make a difference by inspiring tech to other women in tech because we need more women to inspire us in the tech community.
Yes, women's can do wonders, isn't it? So,
Yes, yeah. Yes, that's
awesome,
right.
awesome job on your community initiatives, Jana. You're well deserved Microsoft recognition as then Microsoft Azure MVP. Now, getting into the business that you are dealing with, how do you fit in Azure functions into the real time business challenges that you solve?
Yes, Azure Functions is very useful, especially if you're working with event-driven, use cases. For example, if you have
Mm-hmm.
applications that are event-driven that needs to talk to an API, for example, external or within Azure services, or for example, if you have event-driven use cases that requires to listen to a certain event, for example an event from an IoT hub or an event in a service bus queue or a Cosmos DB in Azure, for example. So it's event driven use case application, then serverless Azure functions or durable functions is ideal for that.
Mm-hmm. So the input bindings that Azure Functions comes in default with makes the event-driven implementation possible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. And
Mm-hmm.
also not just
Mm-hmm.
Azure Functions, but there is also an extension of Azure Function called Durable Functions that is
Mm-hmm.
also pretty great. I myself
Mm-hmm.
like it so much because just an introduction. So Azure Functions is function as a service or serverless in which we developers focus on the code and then the
Mm-hmm.
data input and output binding. And then there's also
Mm-hmm.
an extension of Azure Functions called Durable Functions. Durable
Mm-hmm.
Functions is an extension of Azure Functions that allow us to write stateful workflows, which means that
Mm-hmm.
if you have something that requires you want to keep the state, then it's ideal for that. And of course, there are different patterns for durable functions. I can go ahead and share about it if it's okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
uh,
please.
so, dur- durable functions have first the types. So durable
Mm-hmm.
functions have different types. So the first types is the client functions. They are like the
Mm-hmm.
events, or they kick starts the orchestration. They can be your HTTP trigger, your Cosmos DB trigger, or service bus trigger. And then there's also the other type called orchestrator functions. And then this is where you write your workflows, the tasks that you need to perform using the pattern that you choose. And then there's also the activity functions. They are the tasks that you do, that you perform. And then there's also the durable entity functions that you use also for durable entities. And the patterns, there are six known ones. There's the function chaining pattern, if you want to chain the function. There's also the fan out and fan in functions, if you want to aggregate all tasks in parallel and aggregate it, the result as one. And then there's also the async HTTP API functions for long running endpoints that you want to do in your workflow. And then there's also the monitor pattern, the async, the human interaction pattern, and also the aggregator pattern, which is commonly used for durable entities as well. And of course, those are the known six patterns, but we developers can actually create as many patterns as we want, because durable functions allow us to create sub orchestration within an orchestration as well. So it can be pretty complex as you go deeper into different workflows, but those are the basics of durable functions.
Awesome, awesome. I'm sure each of these six patterns individually can be talked about for half an hour or so. But
Yes,
can
yeah,
you
no.
enlighten enlighten our listeners with one pattern of your choice with a real time scenario, so that they can take away with a clear understanding of what this pattern is and how an Azure function can fit into a real time business scenario.
Yes, I can mention one or two. We can start with one. Yeah, so one scenario is, for example, function chaining, in which you can use
Mm-hmm.
function chaining to create a workflow for a series of events. For example, if I have a trigger, for example, an Azure storage blob trigger. So what I can do is,
Mm-hmm.
when I upload an image or a file to my Azure storage, then I can trigger
Mm-hmm.
my workflow or orchestration to perform several series or sequence of tasks. For example, sending an email to the administrator, or saving
Mm-hmm.
that message to a service bus, or save it to an Azure Cosmos DB database, or send an
Mm-hmm.
SMS. And there's also another
Mm-hmm.
pattern which I also like, is the human interaction pattern, which is pretty good
Mm-hmm.
to use if you have a long running workflow requirements that requires a human interaction. So it waits for an external event from a human, for example, approval
Mm-hmm.
workflows for an HR. So you can use an external event or from a person to approve that request. And if you have
Mm-hmm.
you can code to have a durable timer that checks the time out. And if that timer times out, you can perform or escalate another call another function activity to perform or process further. And there's a lot of use
Mm-hmm.
case. Serverless is also used for security in the
Mm,
cloud. So there are a lot of great things
mm,
and
mm.
possibilities.
Yes. Yes. And in fact, they have transformed the way we build business applications now when compared to a decade back when we started a career with IT industry. The way we build smart applications on the go is definitely because of Microsoft Azure serverless technologies. Yeah.
Yes.
And as you were explaining about the durable functions, Jana, in defining workflows, which is very common in many business scenarios, I was also connecting it with Logic App. So, how is it different from Logic Apps? When should I choose a durable function over a Logic App, or do they go hand in hand?
Great. That's a great question. So, as
Mm,
you as Maney or you Essie is aware of, Azure
mm,
Functions, they are more coding, more writing workflows in the code, while Azure Logic
mm-hmm,
App, it's more on the UI or on the Azure portal you created. But they can go hand in hand as well. I myself is a
mm-hmm.
developer and I like
Uh-huh.
coding, writing code. So it's expected
Uh-huh.
that I did more hands-on and or creating workflows with durable functions.
Mm,
However, I see
mm,
the potential also with Azure Logic
mm,
App when it comes to low-code solutions and integrate the integration with other services like in the Office
mm, mm.
365 and other SaaS services, and it integrates pretty well both Logic App and Azure
Yeah.
Functions, depending on the use case that you're trying to solve. So I'm really happy that they're both
Mm.
available for us.
Yeah, and also about depending on the available human skill set that we have, we'll have to choose
Mhm.
them appropriately,
Yes,
right?
I
Yeah.
agree.
Mm. So now I have found a very apt question for you to answer, Jana. Tell us about
Yes.
the programming languages support that Azure Functions extend. You being a
Yeah.
developer, you would be the right person I can find. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Azure
Mm,
Functions or serverless solutions like Azure Functions or Durable Functions in Azure, they support several
mm,
languages that we love to code. For example, for me, I'm a C Sharp .NET developer, so they support C Sharp, PowerShell,
mm-hmm,
Python,
mm,
JavaScript, and other languages as well. And as
mm-hmm,
far as I
mm-hmm,
know, they're working on having Azure Functions available in other programming languages like Go or Rust language. So there are great
mm-hmm,
stuff going on, and a lot of frameworks are supported. And for example, if you're
mm-hmm,
working with containers, I want to add, if you're working with containers, actually Azure Functions provide support for CADA, and it is
mm-hmm,
autoscaler for Kubernetes. And there's also, and after the
mm-hmm,
Ignite, they also announced the
mm-hmm,
Azure Container Apps, which are for serverless containers.
mm-hmm,
So I myself is pretty
mm-hmm.
excited to do a real hands-on on containers in serverless arena, as you can say.
Awesome. So I have also observed that Azure Functions has got multiple versions being released. So it's in a way that it is a technology that's drastically getting upgraded. But how easy it is in production to keep up with these upgrades, Jonah?
Yes, when it comes to upgrades, for example, if you already have a function app that are already in production, it is good to have a
Mm,
side by side deployment. So, which means that
mm,
you have to be aware of the things that you update to production. For example, you can make use of the deployment slots in your app, in your function app, in order to do the side by side deployment and conscious versioning as well. So, and also
mm,
when
mm,
it comes
mm,
to development, I want to highly advise about making use of monitoring in your functions. For example,
mm,
application insights and logging in your
mm,
code as well, because it will
mm,
definitely help you in debugging and
mm,
finding the issues somewhere when that happens
mm,
in
mm,
production.
mm. So continuous monitoring is critical.
Yes.
Yes. Uh, so it would be great also to include in this discussion about the tires that in which the hosting tires that I can have options on in deploying my Azure functions. Is it a consumption plan or app service plan? When to choose what, which is appropriate in production?
Yes. So in Azure Functions or serverless compute services like them, there are the pretty common one for serverless solutions is the consumption plan, and then there's also the
Mm-hmm.
premium plan for that. But consumption plan, some issues that can occur is the problem with the cold start, which is pretty common. Many are experiencing. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want to have a dedicated service for that, then you can make use of the premium plan as well. So I've
Mm-hmm.
based on my
Mm-hmm.
experience and what I heard from other use cases, some projects in
Mm-hmm.
production works pretty well in
Mm-hmm.
consumption service because they save a lot of money. Because, for example, in durable functions, in your workflow, if you have an
Mm-hmm.
orchestrator, if that function is not running, then you
Mm-hmm.
don't get charged. But sometimes there are use case scenarios that you really need to prevent that
Mm-hmm.
cold start and do the premium version plan
Mm-hmm.
instead.
Yeah.
Maybe you have something to add, Izzy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, yes. We have an experience with our own product, Jana. Serverless 360 is our product that we have built to support Azure applications in productions. It's ideal for the business and support users in an enterprise who doesn't have much knowledge about the system, but still they will have to render support to their customers without troubling the skilled Azure resources to take up the low value tasks. So here we have a feature called business activity monitoring, and we make use of Azure Functions at the back end to deal with tracking of information that's flowing into the business application of the customer. So here, customers will have varying load. For some customers, we have discrete events which have sudden spikes and then no events at all. But for some customers, there is a steady flow. So in case of steady flow, we did not have any problem. But when there are scenarios like there is a spike and there is no load for time, we encountered the cold start issue when we had our functions and consumption tier. That, as you rightly mentioned, we resolved it by switching the tier to app service plan, and things could work then.
Yes, that's a great like use case or example as well. So, based on that, I can sense that the monitoring and logging is
Mm,
important. So,
mm,
as
mm,
it's not just about writing the code and building the serverless apps, but it's also about knowing the entire flow, also learning the basic, having the monitoring, and taking care of
mm,
what's in production as well.
mm.
So, yeah, good example.
Exactly. Yeah, we hold the responsibility to make sure that our solution is delivered right to the customer.
Yes, that's great.
Exactly.
Yes.
So let's take in a short, like a lighter question
Yeah.
here. Tell us more about the book that you are writing about.
Yes, yeah, I did mention that I'm writing a book. So I'm currently writing a book. It's a 1 year project. I'm writing a book about Azure with O'Reilly, and my book is about
Mm-hmm.
first. It's for beginners of Azure as well as the intermediate level as well, in which the readers will be able to
Mm-hmm.
learn from the beginning what cloud computing is, the basic of Azure, and then go through the entire chapters learning about the different services or categories like compute, networking,
Mm-hmm.
security, and even my experience with cloud
Mm-hmm.
migration that I am really passionate about. And the reason why I'm writing this book is because I want to share knowledge. It's my first book, so it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
a journey itself. But I'm passionate about sharing the knowledge about Azure, and I also want to make a difference. And I also, one of the big reason why I'm writing this book, because I've been in a cloud migration journey, and that was to move an
Mm-hmm.
application, a legacy application, to the cloud. And that migration journey, I was alone in that project. I was the one that wants to help move that to Azure, but that migration journey didn't
Mm-hmm.
failed and didn't work. I didn't make it to production, not because Azure couldn't comply. I mean, couldn't provide the migration needs of that use case. It's just because the company or the organization and some of my colleagues were not ready for
Mm-hmm.
cloud transformation. So this is the reason
Mm-hmm.
why I want to write
Okay.
the book, so that we create that cloud education for others. Like it's not just about moving stuff to the cloud, there's more to that. So
Mm.
yeah, I hope this book will help, and it will be on release soon.
And that's a great initiative from your end, because the industry is heading towards a transformation. And as you have rightly spotted, this is the challenge that we get to hear from a number of enterprise customers. That is, the employees or the organization key decision makers are not ready to adapt to the cloud. And I'm sure your book is going to make an great role play a great role in educating people about the cloud benefits of building systems in cloud, and how secure it is. Like, instead of creating things from scratch by ourselves, we can rely on reliable service providers and take advantage of the benefits that we get from them.
Yes.
Absolutely. We are waiting to be one of the first readers of your
Thank
book.
you. Thank you so
And
much.
I'm sure I'll come back to you on
Yeah,
that.
sure. We can talk about it.
Hmm.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
Sure. And let us end this episode with your tips for people who are getting into the Azure.
Yes.
What is your tips? Where should they get started
Yeah,
from?
for those that are getting started with Azure or even serverless solutions in Azure, is to for
Mm,
beginners is to start with
mm,
the free resources that you have right now. For example,
mm,
Microsoft Learn or Microsoft Documentation has a lot of great tools to use, and also to also
mm,
find. To follow great experts or mentors as well, because I believe that you learn more by getting
mm,
inspiration from others, and also you learn more by doing. So you just don't learn Azure by just reading
mm.
a book or reading a text. You have
Very
to
true.
learn by doing. So that's my advice for beginners. And for intermediates or those that are really skilled already, so is to keep learning, and also to, for example, if you're developing, is to with durable functions, is to make use of the monitoring services and the logging options that you have, especially if you're working with production environments, and to make use of the great things that you can integrate with serverless functions. And also I also want to advise those that are very good in serverless or Azure already, is to keep sharing what you already can, because that's how we help
Mm,
and collaborate, by sharing knowledge, because we need everyone. Yes. So that's my advice. And
exactly.
my advice is
More,
pretty
yeah, more.
pretty both technical and very soft as well, because I always believe in continuous learning.
Very true, Jana. Our learning should cease only at death, and it should commence at
Yes.
birth. That is what even I believe in. And it gives there is a connect when you see a like-minded person, and that's the connect I have got with you, Jana.
Thank you.
I didn't realize, yeah, how we spent this last few minutes. It was wonderful. And keep continuing your inspiring journey in Azure world, and all the attendees discover durable functions and innovate. We are happy, share it with the community. We are happy to listen.
Yes, thank you. And if, to those that are listening and or watching us, if you have any questions, or if you want to learn about serverless or durable functions, feel free to connect with me on my Twitter or my website, on the bio of this podcast as well. So let's connect and let's help each other collaborate. And Essie, thank you so much for having me as well. And I know that we were both in the serverless conference, right? Were we in the yes, yeah.
Yes, yes, Jana. We
Yeah, that's
presented
really
together.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here in your podcast.
The pleasure is ours. Pleasure is all ours. Thank you so much for your
Yes,
time with
thank you
us.
everyone.
Cove.co.